It feels as though the summer's gone very quickly. We've reached the semi-final stage, starting on Saturday evening, 5 o'clock throw-in at Croke Park for Galway against Clare, and then the more traditional 3:30 throw-in on Sunday for the clash of Cork and Limerick. Delighted to be joined on the line by former Tipperary hurler Shane McGrath and former Clare hurler Jamesie O'Connor. Evening, lads.
How's it going, Nathan?
So we might start, Shane, with Saturday's game, the clash of Galway and Clare. It feels as though we spent a lot of this summer talking about Galway in terms of going back-to-back, in terms of potential greatness, multiple All-Irelands, forging a dynasty. And then I'm reading the previews this week where Jackie Tyrrell's given Clare a huge chance of causing an upset. Anthony Daly is unconvinced by Galway's form this year. Can you make a reasonable argument for Clare winning this game?
Yes, of course you could make a reasonable argument. I mean, they're in an All-Ireland semi-final for a reason. They're one of the top 4 teams in the country, and rightly so. But I said it from the start of the year, and I just feel Galway got their rude awakening the first day in the Leinster final. I just think they're an awesome team, and it's just a set of forwards they have. I mean, I'm not sure what the team announcement's going to be tonight or tomorrow night, but if Conor Cooney's not making their team, I think he'd be in every other forward line in the country, and that'll just tell you how good they are. The only worry I would have, and I've said it before, is they don't have a 3 or a 6 to come in off the bench to replace Daithí Burke or Garrod McInerney. So if one of those did get an injury, Galway don't have the same kind of presence, the same kind of character to come in and fill that. And that's the only place I can see Galway being caught, to be honest, this Saturday. And I think, I don't know our TV programmes doing player cams anymore, but I would just fix the two of them firmly on Daithí Burke and John Conlan, because it's just going to be Goliath versus Goliath there, and I think that's the matchup everybody's looking forward to seeing, and I'm sure James will elaborate on it. But will Garrod McInerney sit in the pocket? Maybe he won't be able to, because if Tony Kelly does start at 11, he's going to drift out the field. But I mean, there's just so many potential matchups, but to be honest, I just think Galway have got their kind of kick up the arse, if you want to say that, and I can't see him not pushing on and even just winning this All-Ireland again this year.
Well, James, you picked that up then on the potential matchups. We might get on to Garrod McInerney and Tony Kelly and how that'll go. But Daithí Burke and John Conlan and John Conlan's progression this year, because when you think back to the Clare side of 2013, he was there, but he wasn't one of the players we came away from that All-Ireland win talking about. What's really changed with him over the past 4 or 5 years?
Well, I think he was always a primary ball winner. One of those guys who was very important to the team. Given that we didn't have, I suppose, a particularly big forward line, guys like David Reedy, Podge, etc. But I think the move to full forward has transformed him. I mean, he was probably Clare's best forward in the opening round against Cork, Nathan, when I think he got 5 points from centre forward. But when he went to the edge of the square against Waterford, something changed for Clare, because now the ball could go indirect. It wasn't coming out easily. He gave him that focal point. He was fouled for frees. He's playing with great confidence, freedom. And he's maintained that form right throughout the championship and was unmarkable, I suppose, in the first half of that Munster final. And Clare just couldn't get him with enough body in him in the second half and paid the price as a result. So I suppose Daithí Burke is meeting someone that he hasn't met before. Now that said, John Conlan is about to meet, I suppose, the incumbent All-Star full back as well. And as Shane said, that matchup alone would be worth the admission fee, because you've got 2 physically strong, ferociously competitive players both playing at the top of their games.
The role then of Shane O'Donnell and the emergence then of John Conlan, how has that changed Clare's season? Because we saw that first day against Cork. Shane O'Donnell got a huge amount of ball, but maybe wasn't the most efficient, seemed almost confused at times, Jamesie, as to what the best option was. Maybe you felt certain moments should have been more selfish. At other times there were options where he didn't lift his head.
Yeah, well, certainly, if you told me, Nathan, before the game that Conor McGrath and Shane O'Donnell would get the volume of ball they got in the inside forward line, I would have said that Clare were going to win by a cricket score, given that, Conlan chipped in with 5 points in play as well. But as you said, they took wrong options. They probably shot when they should have. Maybe passed the ball when they should have taken it in further or gone for a score. And Clare paid the price for not converting those chances. McGrath obviously has struggled for form since, and, says Podge came in for him and has hurled well and has retained his place. Now, he's a nice option to have off the bench. But O'Donnell, again, didn't play well in the Munster final. His form has been inconsistent, but there was welcome signs, I think, in the Wexford match that, he's starting to find his form again. He's starting to get his shooting boots and get a bit more confidence to take on those scoring chances himself. And the reality is that he's a live threat, and he's a guy that Galway have to account for, because, if he wins primary possession and puts that head down and heads for goal, he's a hard man to stop, and Clare would hopefully have runners coming off him as well. So that's one of the things that Galway are going to have to account for. The other big matchup that you mentioned earlier was McInerney and Tony Kelly, because when suppose Richie Hogan came on in the second half of the replayed Leinster final, he found those pockets of space and got on quite a bit of ball, and had he been a bit sharper, could have caused Galway maybe one or two more problems. McInerney wanted to sit, I suppose, and hold the middle. And for a finish, I think Galway, decided to get Pádraig Mannion in and put the shackles on Hogan. So that option is there for them as well. But those matchups, those key central matchups in the Galway defence, if Clare can get parity there or win either of those battles, well, then it's a huge fillip for them, Nathan, and it gives them a chance.
Shane, George McInerney doesn't seem quite as bulletproof as he was before the Leinster final. That he was rattled that day by Kilkenny. They got him having to move in a way that maybe most teams haven't. Is that something Clare can latch on to? Is that something Tony Kelly's particularly good at?
Yeah, I suppose you have to take Galway to a place they don't want to be taken, and Gearóid McInerney, for him to be at his best, he needs to be in that quarterback role, which is sitting in that pocket. And I know, he doesn't want to be sucked out the field, but I think, Nathan, what he has is he has four guys around him who work so hard, so Gearóid McInerney can be that guy that sits in the pocket. He has two guys either side of him in Hart and Mannion who can mark, who can pick up guys moving left or right, but who can hurl as well. And in Johnny Cohn and David Burke, more so Johnny Cohn from a defensive side of view, he has a guy who's willing to pick up 11. And, as a guy who's played midfield, you want to get on the mount of ball, but Johnny Cohen's a real team player for Galway. And I heard Jackie talking about him on your show there during the week. He's not going to get the 9s and 10s out of 10 in the paper. But I'd say in video analysis night, Johnny Cohen is a guy who gets a lot of credit off Micheál Donoghue and the team. And that's what it's all about. He's dropping way back, and if number 11 comes out too far, he picks up number 11. So I think whatever Clare, if Tony Kelly does go deep, that Cohen or Burke will be happy to do that extra bit of work and maybe sacrifice a small bit of their game to pick him up and allow McInerney to be the best where he is. And the best Gearóid McInerney is at 6, but not, sitting in that pocket in front of Daithí Burke. Just to touch briefly on the other McInerney, the other side, I think Clare can't really afford to leave him maybe fullback if he is picked fullback for the whole game, because sure Jamesie will agree, I think Dave McInerney is a serious hurler, and that's where Clare might need him in the half-back line, hurling and delivering quality ball in and maybe bypassing the likes of McInerney. Whereas, maybe with all due respect to Conor Cleary, he might be a better match for Johnny Glynn and let the two of them battle it out. But get McInerney on ball and get him looking up and distributing ball, which I thought he did very well against Wexford in comparison to what they did before, and took Sean Murphy out of it as a sweeper.
Sounds, James, like there's an awful lot for the Clare management to think about. You want to counter Galway in so many different ways, but also you want to get your own best players on the ball more often. And we've asked this question about Tony Kelly a lot as to how you involve him. And is there a certain sense, just on Tony Kelly, that you may end up sacrificing him if he ends up playing too close to Gearóid McInerney?
Well, I think it's, to a certain extent that question has been asked, what do we need to do to get Tony Kelly on the ball? But I think that the chief person who has to answer that question is Tony himself. What does Tony need to do? And certainly against Wexford, Donald Toohey, found him with a couple of puckouts. His movement, I thought, was a lot better. He was looking for the ball. And he just seems to be busier. And sometimes, too, form doesn't find you. You find form, Nathan. And hopefully that's the case. That's the case with Kelly. He knows that, listen, he can't be expected to stand, beside Gearóid McInerney for the game or get into an aerial battle with him. Kelly's at his best when he's moving, drifting into space, coming off the shoulder and taking passes. And if he gets an early score, he's capable of getting 4, 5, 6. And if that's the case and he plays well, well, then the team tends to play well. And Clare have certain players, and Podge is another one that, when they go well, it just seems to give something extra to the team, and as I said, Clare supporters will be hoping that's the case. That's the case at the weekend.
Where would you play David McInerney?
Well, they experimented during the league when Conor Cleary, played most of the league at fullback and McInerney at centre back. But against Limerick in the league quarter final that they lost, McInerney, wants to run with the ball at times, and in doing so, he left a gaping hole through the middle of the defence. And Cleary, who had played pretty well at fullback, but it's a new position for him, again was exposed at times, and Limerick got a couple of goals that night that kept them in the game when Clare looked like they were going to run away with it. So that experiment was abandoned, and I was quite happy, to be honest, that it was abandoned, because I still think McInerney, with his athleticism, with his ability to recover, is our best option at fullback. Ideally, we get the best of both worlds and we have him at 6 and at 3, but I think needs must. And Cleary has been heavily criticised maybe within Clare, that his hurling is limited and all the rest of it, but he's an honest player that tries to do the right thing with the ball. And okay, he's not Seanie McMahon, and maybe there's an expectation in Clare that they want a guy that can play like that. But I think he'll do a job for the team at the weekend, and if he can just hold the middle down and keep tabs on Canning when he's in his general area and break even there again, it's one of those mini victories that Clare probably need to have a lot of to have a chance of success.
You both know how hard it is to retain a Lee McCarthy, and Anthony Daly this week saying he's not overly convinced by Galway that maybe they're cruising away and that Clare can get at them, Clare can rattle at them. Have you got that sense at all, Shane, that Clare, the Galway are in a little bit of cruise control and are vulnerable?
I from the bunch of players that are there, I just think there's so much talent there, and I would have worked at Micheál Donoghue before he got involved with Galway. He came in with us for a couple of years, getting a bit of experience with Eamon O'Shea, and I just found him that a guy. He wants to learn, but he really wants to win, and I think he'll have these guys very much grounded, and I think that this group of players know that there's something special about this group, and that if they need to win as much as they can in the time they can. They don't want to wait another 30 years, to be talking in 30 years' time. Goes, oh, do you remember that great team we had? Do you remember all the games we nearly won? I mean, I was part of a good team, and let's be honest, we didn't win as much as we should. But I think this group of players, they're mentally strong, they're physically strong, and they can hurl as well. And I just think that they will be very much grounded. They know a hard test is coming for them at the weekend and Saturday. I mean, it's an All-Ireland semi-final. I mean, every team that's got there has got there on merit. So I don't think they're going to be under any illusions about Clare or even about how bad Wexford were. I mean, let's be honest, Wexford were bad. Their big players didn't stand up. Their manager didn't look like he had the energy and the normal passion he had in the sideline. So they know that this Clare team, they got over Wexford, they did what they had to do, and they will see the performance they gave maybe in the second half against Tip as the real Clare that's coming up to Croke Park, and there'll be the world of support there with him as well, and I think it'll be very close. But as I said already, Nathan, I still think Galway are going to come out maybe 4 or 5 points the winners.
Yeah, and they did cruise through the round robin in Leinster, and then, James, even when it was put up to them in the Leinster final and in the replay, they found a way. They had that extra little something that great teams do have. They always seem to find a way, and maybe we're looking for faults where there are none with this Galway side. Yeah, and as you said, they came through the round robin pretty emphatically. I mean, people were wondering Wexford Park, there was going to be a big challenge from Wexford, and they blew Wexford away. Took care of business in Salt Hill when Kilkenny were coming to town, and that was going to be a big challenge. And I always felt, Nathan, that somewhere along the line, that their chances of winning it would probably be improved if they had a blip somewhere along the way, and that happened certainly in the draw in Leinster final. And they got their wake-up call at a time when that stumble or stagger wasn't going to be fatal. They know now that it's not called hurling from now on. They can't afford to be below par at the weekend because Clare have the weapons to hurt them. But the reality is that if they reproduce the form they showed in that opening 20 minutes of the Leinster final replay, when Cohen and Burke were phenomenal and completely lauded at midfield, the half back line were on top, and they were just getting that fast direct ball into Johnny Glynn at the edge of the square with Whelan and Mannion breaking off them, then I don't think Clare nor Cork or Limerick will live with them for that matter. But they mightn't play as well again, and it's a funny type of rivalry. There's no great poison or bitterness between the counties. Clare played them in a challenge match a couple of weeks after the league final last year, ran them ragged, and I don't think Galway fancied meeting Clare in the championship. So certain counties just match up well against others, and Clare will certainly be hoping that they've encountered physical opposition in Wexford and Limerick and taken care of it earlier this year. So if Clare can produce a big performance and their big ones play well, then who knows. But the reality is, I'm probably seeing to date, Nathan, Galway are favourites, and I still expect them to come through and win. Alright, so that's Galway against Clare, 5 o'clock throw in Croke Park on Saturday. On Sunday at 3:30 it is Limerick against Cork. James, you mentioned Limerick there as being a physical team. Are they a particularly physical team? Is this a different type of Limerick than you've seen over the last 5-10 years?
Well, I think it's obviously you look at their half back line and their half forward line, and they're physically imposing men. I mean, Kyle Hayes, and the two wing forwards are big in stature, but what's really impressed me, is the composure they're showing, Nathan, the type of game they're trying to play, this accurate short stick passing, where they're certainly using the ball far more efficiently and far better than was the case in the past. And even going back to last year, when they lost to Kilkenny, the wide count was regularly into double digits. They made mistakes, and they seem to keep repeating those mistakes. That certainly hasn't been the case in this year's championship. And they were disappointing against Clare and Ennis. They probably ran into Clare at the wrong time. It was their third game in 3 weeks. That syndrome seemed to affect them. Clare were buoyant coming off the win against Tipperary, and Clare had to win. But the response, a couple of weeks ago against Kilkenny, when Richie Hogan got that late goal, we all assumed it's going to be the same old story. And the composure they showed and the nerve they showed, to keep trying to do the right things with the ball on a wet day, and the scores they got were, I think they have to take huge confidence from. So it's a different Limerick team, I think, in that sense that, there's certainly a change in style. They're using the ball, as I said, far more efficiently. I think that they found a couple of players in their full forward line. Galway and Seamus Harnedy are good players, quality players, and Graham Mulcahy is reborn as well, and that's a potent inside line. So I think Limerick will really put it up to Cork at the weekend. And as I said, if they can play as well as they did against Kilkenny, particularly when the gum was put to their head, it bodes well for their chances.
Shane, that accurate short stick passing that Jamesie was talking about, it's brilliant to watch when it's done well and it's done at a very high level. If you end up losing, quite often it's thrown back at you that it was overly complicated. They were taking too much out of it. How do you go about getting that balance right?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the accurate stick passing. I think the best man in the country at it at the moment is Mark Coleman. I just love watching this guy playing wing back. His head's up, he's just full of confidence, and he's always looking for it. And I think the best hurling team left in the competition, Nathan, are Cork, in my opinion. Now, what do I mean by that? I think that if there was a fail of skills competition to win the All-Ireland, I think Cork would win it, because Mark Coleman would be pinging balls from sidelines, Patrick Horgan would be able to strike left and right over the bar, and Dara Fitzgibbon would be going through maybe if there was a speed contest. So if it comes down to skills, I think Cork are the most skillful team left in it. Are they the most physical team? They're not, but they have some physical guys. O'Donoghue and Spillane are no slouches in the backs. Christopher Joyce, maybe Mark Ellis might be back as well. Do you know what I mean? Seamus Harnedy is a big guy. But I think, and I heard John Myler talking here before, you have to play to your strengths, and Cork's strength is their hurling. And they seem to be using that very well at the moment. That day, the day against in the Munster final, it was a real hot day. The balls they were trying to play, Nathan, if there was a bit of grass in the pitch at all, which there is in Croke Park, the balls just run out over the sideline. But the balls, they'll use the space and they'll utilise it to the last. From a biased point of view with the midfielders, there was 9 points from play scored from the midfielders in Cork and Limerick the last day down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And I think that battle there is going to be, whoever can come out on top of that battle will go a long way towards winning it as well. And it's just going to be a high scoring game and another classic game. But James alluded to already the composure that Limerick showed. They're young guys, but they're used to winning. As soon as Richie Hogan got the goal, the ball goes straight down the field. Kyle Hayes gets a point. Tom Morrissey's composure to get that point. These guys are used to winning, and that's why I just feel that Limerick are coming in full of confidence. The bandwagoners are going to be up there as well, and their genuine fans is going to be 75,000 up there. And I think Limerick are just going to edge this one. All
right. So you're leaning towards Limerick. From a Cork point of view, then, Shane, if they're to do anything, how important is Seamus Harnedy? He is a doubt. He's picked up some sort of a hamstring injury. I'm sure they're going to give him every possible opportunity to be on the pitch come 3:30 on Sunday. But if he doesn't make it, in terms of blows for this Cork side, in terms of how they want to play the game, just how big an issue could it be?
Massive blow, because I was down watching Cork and Water in the league earlier on this year, and Seamus Harnedy got a straight red card for doing something absolutely ridiculous. And I think since then he sat down with himself, maybe he sat down with the management, and he said, I'm the captain of this team and I'm going to lead by example. And that's what he did. He's done it in all the championship matches so far. He did it against Waterford in the Munster League part of things when they needed him. He scored 1-4 in the Munster final. He was captain, he was man of the match. I'd say unless his leg is actually hanging off, he's going to be playing the match Sunday, and John Myler is going to give him every chance right up to the final whistle, because they don't have someone like Seamus Harnedy to come in off the bench. And I know Limerick, a lot of people will say that Cork were maybe tired playing them the last time in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It was their third week in a row. But I think what a lot of people are forgetting is Aaron Gallan got sent off. Okay, that's the thing that's talked about a lot. The thing that's not talked about, Nathan, was Declan Hannon went off after about 7 or 8 minutes that day. And we're talking about Gerard McInerney as centre back. He's equally, as part into Limerick's game, the quality of ball that they give in. They took 20 shots in the first half against Kilkenny the last day, scored 15 of them. And that's not because, they're so accurate. The quality of ball that their half back line's giving in, and Declan Hannon's a big part of that. He's going to be there, and he'll be, full of fight for it as well. So if Harnedy is out, I think it's a massive, massive plus for Limerick. But even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%, let's be honest, with a hamstring injury in the time he has. So, I've said it already. I'm going to go for Limerick for this game on Sunday.
It feels, James, even though we've had the round robin series and we've seen more of these teams than we've ever seen in the championship before, that there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of question marks about both of these teams. And Shane touched on there the skills of this Cork side, that individually brilliant players, that the question mark over this Cork team is still maybe on the mentality side and the physicality side, which are two things you're not going to win an All-Ireland without. They're back-to-back Munster champions. Are there signs that they can get to the level mentally and physically that you need to win an All-Ireland?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, and I was one of those people that, maybe questioned that when it really came down to a battle that, Galway, Tip, Kilkenny, the other contenders, Waterford, would feel that, they could maybe bully this Cork team and, have too much of them. But they've answered all the questions that have been asked this year. I mean, even going back to the opening day against Clare came right back at them, had the momentum of the match. There was I think an injury then. Robbie O'Flynn went down, and you could see Anthony Nash, he was out in the 21 getting the players together in various huddles, and you just got the sense that this is player-led, and they retook momentum again and won that match. Again, Tip came at them. Waterford, they were behind. Limerick asked real questions. And in the Munster final, I mean, 8 points down coming into the 34th minute. On every occasion, Nathan, they have found a response. And it just seems to be player-led, player-driven. And when that's the case, that's a big, big positive. And, people talk about their physicality. I mean, the two cornerbacks, Conlan, it's a big full back line. Joyce, Ellis, are physically big. Bill Cooper has a hard edge to him. And certainly up front, I mean, whatever questions were asked about Pat Horgan and Harnedy, I mean, they have answered them in spades, because when the needs been at its greatest, those guys have stepped up and delivered as they did in the Munster final. And Horgan is nigh on unmarkable at times this year, if he gets any kind of quality ball. So I fancy Cork, Nathan. I think that, there's something different about them this year. That, remember that it's 5 years since Clare were back in Croke Park, but it's also 5 years since Nash, Lahan, Harnedy, Joyce, all those guys effectively had one hand on Liam McCarthy. I mean, it was into the 73rd minute when Donald O'Donovan got that equaliser. And
you don't need to bring it up every time, Jamesie.
I know, and I think these guys, they haven't been back on an Ireland final day yet, and they've come close. And 2014 they came up short, and obviously last year they came up short as well. And I just sense that they're hell bent on getting back there. And if Harnedy is out, it's definitely a game changer. But assuming he plays and assuming he's close to 100%, I just think that there's something different about Cork this year, and I just think that they'll edge it, Nathan.
All right, so you're going for a Galway-Cork final, Jamesie. Is it a full expectation, Shane, that it'll be Galway who Limerick will face?
Well, I tell you what, Nathan, if there's Limerick and Clare in the All-Ireland final, I'm going to have to move to Southern Yemen or something for the next months, because I know we are as a Tipperary man, but I'm going for a Limerick Galway All-Ireland final. Galway I think they got their rude awakening. They're very, very focused. They know what they have to do. They'll be under no illusions, and I think Limerick are coming in full of confidence after beating Kilkenny for the first time in 45 years. John Kiley and Paul Kinnock will know what they have to do to win this, and so that's why I'm going to go for Limerick and Galway for the two wins at the weekend, Nathan.
All right, great stuff, lads. Thanks a lot for taking the call. Shane McGrath and Jamesie O'Connor there, and full coverage of the weekend's hurling semi-finals coming away on Off the Ball over the weekend. On Saturday, Daithí Regan will be at the clash of Galway and Clare, and then on Sunday, Limerick against Cork. We'll have Tommy Walsh at Croke Park.